She spoke of wings. When my daughter turned 4 years old, my husband and I were telling her that 4 years ago we were in the hospital and we were getting ready to have her. She turned to me as serious as can be and she said these exact words. "I know, Mommy. I remember I was with a man and I had wings. They were really big, like fairy wings, and I was flying with him, and then I sat with him and he told me that I was going to be okay, and then I was born." My husband and I are not religious. Our families are a little religious, but not enough to have the talk about afterlife and death with a child. She didn't understand, nor could she comprehend death at this point anyway. During her delivery, we experienced shoulder dystocia. She was deprived of oxygen for over 5 minutes. We didn't really comprehend what was going on until afterwards, but when she was finally born, she didn't have a heartbeat. Obviously, she was brought back to life, though. She had a broken collarbone from the delivery, but miraculously no brain damage. I went into shock at that point and had to have reconstructive surgery due to trauma. All of this to say that when she was born, she really did die, but she was brought back to life. And she said that she remembers it because a man took the wings off her back. I would normally consider the statements by the storyteller's daughter to be standard imaginative stories that most kids come up with. However, with the extra context, there's a striking similarity between what the daughter said and the reality of her birth. A reality that surely she would not have heard about beforehand, as this is the first time her mom brought it up.
That's amazing. I really believe her.
Thank you so much for saying that. She always said things of this nature, but as she grew older, she kind of grew out of it.
I don't agree with the common conception about children saying silly things. I think young children are closer to the source, and as they age, they forget. I also think that adults tell them they're being silly, and then they're not encouraged to develop that kind of sight that we all have. My son, when he was 2, talked to his dead great-grandmother, who had just passed a few weeks before. I don't think that was silly. I think everything was absolutely real. My son and I are both sensitive to energy, and both know things from far away that we normally couldn't. Yes, children say all kinds of things, so I would take this with a pinch of salt. However, I'm convinced that I remember being a newborn and waiting for my mother to pick me up from the hospital crib. Scientists say that it's not possible for a newborn to have such an awareness for this, or for it to be a real memory, but nevertheless, I stick to the image I've had in my mind for as long as I can recall.
She spoke of wings, Part 2. I wanted to share another moment that stayed with me, something similar to the first story. It was another one of those unexpected, quiet conversations that holds more weight than you realize in the moment. When my daughter was roughly 6 years old, we spent a very emotional night at the hospital with my husband's grandmother. Our daughter, who was named after her, had always felt a deep, almost mysterious connection with her great-grandmother. She would often say that she had known her for forever, though she could never explain why. It was something that she just felt in her soul. When we got home from the hospital that day, completely unprompted, she turned to me and said, "Mommy, I know that Grandma died. I saw her with the man who had big fairy wings. She was sitting in a circle in a garden, and they were reading a book." What makes this moment even more incredible is that no one had told her what happened. She only knew that her great-grandmother had been very sick, had been battling cancer, but we hadn't shared the news of her passing yet. Again, we don't really talk about religion much, but our daughter has always had this natural curiosity, an openness to wonder about things that we can't always explain. What is most striking about this case is not only the direct connection of the setting and the character of the man with wings that appeared in the earlier account, but the fact that this connection was made without prompting 2 years later, which is an especially long time for a 6-year-old.
So it sounds like she still remembers telling you about the wings when she was 4, right? And if that's the case, was this the same man?
Honestly, I didn't ask her many questions about what she saw. I was very surprised and, to be honest, a little creeped out. I didn't want to draw attention, embarrass her, or make her feel ashamed. She's a preteen now and she doesn't say things like that anymore. I asked her one time if she remembers this happening, or remembers telling us. She says that she kind of remembers it, but she doesn't remember much. An absolute glitch. Fair warning, I'm going to try and sort of translate this one live. The storyteller in this case was not the best. So, my mom has been gone abroad recently, a whole ocean away. She's had a bad habit of snapping her gum, and it's annoying to us both. Side note, figured out later on, snapping her gum means like chewing bubble gum and popping it, basically. She had been staying with my brother and I for months, and we can always hear her snapping her gum on the second floor. However, like I said, she's left the country for personal reasons, but we heard her tonight. My brother and I were relaxed in our home, and both of us heard her snapping her gum at the same time. We checked, and there was nobody in the guest bedroom where we heard the sound coming from. In this case, an oral hallucination is what most people would point to. Oh, you're just hearing things. But the sound of popping bubblegum is so loud and distinct, it really starts to seem unlikely that the two people would both simultaneously hallucinate such a sound. Although, as many other people have pointed out, if they have been living with their mom for such a long time that they're so used to this sound, happening, there could be some sort of sense memory happening here where they're used to expecting it, and now that it's no longer there, they have this sort of phantom popping sound that they're hearing. The only other possibility that I could think of was that there's some sort of pre-existing phenomenon in the house. Let's say a loose vent that would occasionally pop when the heating turns on. When the storyteller's mom was home, they might just group together that pop and the gum popping as being from the same source. Now that she's gone, though, they can still hear those false pops. Whatever. Okay, no joke. This happened to me, but with whistling. My old roommate used to do this dumb little off-key whistle whenever he was pacing or zoned out. It drove me nuts. After he moved across the country, I heard it clear as day from the kitchen twice in 1 week. I thought maybe I was just imagining it until my friend came over and asked, "Yo, who's whistling upstairs?" We just kind of looked at each other. Didn't even go check, just let it be. Yeah, I totally relate to this. Me and my brother looked at each other like, did we just hear that? I wouldn't have even given it a second thought if we hadn't caught each other's eyes at the same time.
Did you have any fans going? Or a TV playing at a low volume, or any kind of indistinguishable background noise? I can't remember the name of it, but there's a phenomenon. Whenever there's background noise, a lot of it or from multiple sources, your brain can get overloaded because it wants to find something recognizable or familiar within the sounds. Because of that, it will put pieces of noise together to form something that it's heard before. And often that manifests into voices, words, phrases of people that you interact with frequently and whose routines you're used to. Not discounting your experience at all, I just wanted to share this little piece of info in case it might help you or someone else. The phenomenon is called auditory pareidolia. It's essentially hearing something specific, like a song or a person's name, in a noise source that isn't actually producing that sound. I'm of two minds about this. On one hand, I for sure get that the brain is programmed to find meaning in these things. On the other hand, I've for sure seen and heard things that have no logical explanation. A few, but certainly not most, could maybe possibly be explained if you really stretched for it, but I fully believe that there are things that are out there that are beyond the limits of modern science. After all, we didn't know about gravity or the behavior of atoms until very recently. It defies logic to think that we've now discovered everything. You could also be referring to matrixing, which is where the brain attempts to find patterns in randomness. I've heard of a visual form of matrixing, but not auditory. It's an interesting possibility, given that I have had that happen in one very specific spot in my home shortly after I moved in. I would always hear what seemed like a time delay version of my dog walking across the floor from behind me when she was actually in front of me, and in some cases had already passed through a door into the adjacent room. I would set up a recording device anywhere it could capture a recording of that gum snap sound. When you guys hear it again, go check the recorder and see if it's audible. That way you'll know if it's actually moving air to make the sound or if it's more of a psychic phenomenon. At least then you'll know in which direction you might start looking for answers. Obviously, that sound has been a part of your life for a very long time, and when you're doing the things that you frequently do when your mom was still around, you'd expect to hear her snapping gum. Basically, you've been conditioned to have that happen when you expect it. So, now that she isn't there, it's possible your brain adds in that repertoire for you. If it gets recorded, well, then now you have a reason for the hair on the back of your neck to rise.
This has happened to me numerous times. The last weird thing I assume was some sort of glitch was not audio, but physical. Basically, I went up the street to check the mail, and as I was approaching home, I felt a tick or tap vibration on my wrist, as I do when I'm wearing my Apple Watch and it's on the hour, but I wasn't wearing it. I get inside and look at the time, and it was just past the hour. This is definitely just a common physical phenomenon. This was Dante Calvino. Let me know what you thought of the format for these stories, or if you have one of your own to tell. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more mystery every week.